You're listening to Prosper in the Kingdom, the podcast where faith meets practical strategies to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Join hosts John Cleaver and Wendy Lee as they share insights to equip you in your journey toward abundance, spiritually, financially, and beyond. Just a reminder, every situation is unique. The content of this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as specific financial or medical advice.
Welcome back, everybody, to another Prosper in the Kingdom. I can't even say my name, drinking the first cup of coffee. John Cleaver here with the ever awesome Wendy Lee. Wendy, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Happy to be here. Happy Wednesday.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Yeah, and I apologize. I'm a little, my systems are a little slag. I'm here at the cabin, the hideaway. So in eastern Middle Tennessee, I think that's a thing. Yeah, it's a nice little hidey hole with 50 acres and stuff. I'm out here taking a little week sabbatical, getting some stuff done around the property. But today, Wendy and I had a great conversation, everybody. It was about 3 weeks ago, and it involved this tipping that's, in my opinion, become almost forced upon us. So we're going to talk about that today. So today's episode title is going to be The Rise of Tipping Culture from Gratitude to Guilt. And I don't know, Wendy, I mean, kick us off on this, but have you seen a rise of this? Like, everybody wants a tip now.
Everybody wants a tip. I'm like, so what sparked our conversation the other day is I was so annoyed because I went to Dunkin' Donuts drive-through window, and instead of, I went to pay, and instead of them taking my card like normal, they try to be like Starbucks, even though they don't have Starbucks system. And he pulls this whole card reader out the window that has cords attached and everything and wants me to put the card in, which I'm like, why is he doing what's with the thing out the window? Just take my card. And then I put in my card and, oh, that's why, because the next screen pops up. How much do you want to tip? And not only that, but the tipping started at 20%. Started at 20%.
Yeah.
It was like 20, 25, 30, 35%, which I get it. It's like $8. So they want a bigger tip. But I'm like, so I hit no tip because I'm already paying an outrageous amount of money for my coffee. And you literally just poured it. That's it. You did your job. And they're not paid minimum wage, or they're not paid under minimum wage like servers, right?
No, they're paid $12, $13, $15 an hour. Yeah.
And so I hit no tip, and this guy's face visibly was like, he was visibly annoyed, and takes the thing back in. Whatever, gives me my coffee. Too late to do anything to it at that point.
That's the big fear, right? That's the big fear. But that's the thing. I mean, I don't know, you, the viewer, listener out there, have you noticed more tipping prompts popping up literally everywhere? And it's like you said, it's not the 10, 15, 20%. It's like it starts at 20, and I've seen it go 20, 25, 30, right? Automatic. And then you've got to search for the custom or no tip. And it's like 25% of what? All you did was hand me a freaking cup of coffee. Yeah. So, not to top the story or whatever, but it's spreading everywhere, folks. And you look at, I ordered a book online, you see these prompts from Facebook or whatever. I'm like, oh, that looks like a really good book. And so I went to order the book through their funnel, right? They wanted a 20% tip for the book. I'm like, this is all automated. I'm not talking to a soul, and they're asking for 20%. So kind of, flashback, where did tipping come from? It didn't actually originate in the United States. It came from Europe. Here's my history nerd coming out, right? It came from Europe back in the 1800s. Wealthy Americans who traveled abroad would tip for good service, right? But there was a twist, it got tied up with equality and stuff like that. And certain workers were forced to live on tips alone. And that's still, I waited tables in college. I don't know if this is still accurate today with this whole, ever since COVID, things have kind of changed. But when I used to wait tables as a waiter, or now, known as a server, to be unisex, but, it's one of those things that I think I was paid like $2.30 an hour, which at the time minimum wage was like close to $4, right? So you were making almost half of minimum wage, but that was okay because you were making the tips. That was the whole thing. It was almost like being quasi self-employed. But that's not the case anymore. I don't know again about actual restaurants, but you go to baristas and stuff like that, and it's almost like they get hurt and I'm like, dude, you handed me a cup of coffee. It's not like you brought it out to my table. We're checking on me. And don't get me wrong, folks, I am a good tipper. I am a good tipper. Even if the service like sucks, I'll tip 10, 12%. But I'm constantly in that 20, 25% range. And if it's outrageous, I've left 100% tip before if it's outrageously good, right?
Yeah.
But it's all like fault of 20 to 30%. And it's like, what the hell happened?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a son that's a server. And so, yes, they get paid below minimum wage. So they live on tips, and we're used to tipping servers. Like that's what you do. Or tipping, I don't know, where else do we tip? The bellhop or, the valet guy. Like those are people that we're used to tipping. They're doing a service for us. They're putting in time. Their personality in the exchange makes a difference. Like, you know what I mean? So that's when I consider tipping is they have they have a long enough interaction with you that you've gauged, do they deserve a tip or not? Yeah. And, but yeah, to your point about like, I used to be a really good tipper when the standard was 15. I was always 20, 22% for good service. Yeah. Now I'm like, now I feel like I'm gypping people when I tip 20%. It's crazy. But, it's changed a lot.
I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't.
Well, and we'll definitely talk about that because, to the title of this, right? It's gone from gratitude to guilt. Like the reason for our tipping has shifted.
Yeah. I mean, some of the pros of tipping, number one, it gives service workers the ability to earn more, right? And I'm not just talking traditional. I mean, I had some guy come out and do some work on my property and stuff like that. He gave me a bid, he gave me a quote. He came in and got it done quicker than I expected. And he really went above and beyond as far as getting it all dialed in, cleaning up the mess and stuff like that, did a little extra for me. So I tipped him, and it was a big bill. So it was a big tip. Right. And so you look at that, going back to the servers and things like that, it gives them the ability to earn more, especially in those industries where they're making less than actual minimum wage. Right. And even minimum wage, I mean, you look at anymore, I see McDonald's signs hiring 15, bucks an hour. That's kind of in my area. I can't speak for everybody. It may be higher in some, lower in others, but that $15, it's like, okay, that's not minimum wage. That's not even below minimum wage. And a lot of servers are still paid below minimum wage. I have zero problem tipping that. And it also empowers the consumer to show real time. Now, if you're somewhere and that barista or whatever just gave you awesome service,
right,
and you want to tip. I'm not saying don't tip, but that forced tipping, in my opinion, is BS, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what it is. I think that's what's really the grind is, or the chip is coming from the fact that it's not something like, hey, I'm doing this for you and, going above and beyond. So I hope you give me a tip. Now it's like, expected, and they mean mug you if you don't and things like that. And it's just like, what, you're not going to tip me? It's like, you know what? No, because you're a total butthole and your attitude sucks. So it's one of those things. Maybe I'm venting a little bit. This is making me like
venting a little bit. It's okay. It's okay.
No, but it's like, if somebody's got great attitude, great service, tipping is awesome, right? But the problem with it is the way it's done now. It's no longer a reward, right? It's no longer recognizing the fact that you've done a great job. It goes back to every kid gets a trophy. And I think this is that next evolution of it. Now that they're becoming adults, it's like, everybody give me a tip. Well, you should tip. So everybody give me one. I expect it. No. People tip because you go in above and beyond, right?
Exactly.
It's that guilt factor. And it's real. I mean, I don't know if the viewer out there or listener can relate, but I'd love to hear you chime in on this. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about that guilt factor. You're standing at the checkout, just like you said, or the drive-through, right? The worker's watching and the screen pops up. It doesn't pop up, give a tip or 10, 15, 20. It's typically 20, 25, 30. Every once in a while it's 15. The no tip option's hidden on the sub menu. And then suddenly they give you the glare, right?
They just wait
They're
for you.
looking at you. They're looking at you like, you're gonna tip me, right?
Yeah.
Don't not tip me. You're expected to tip me. And then you become the villain with no tip.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It really grates on me. And I think it's gonna end up backfiring on people because I think enough people are it's not like you and I are the only ones talking about this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it also, it's like the confusion. It's like, what am I supposed to be tipping? So what's the standard anymore? Like you said, and like I mentioned earlier, 10% if it's crap service. Now it's really bad service, right? They may get a written note. But I think I've not tipped one time. And the reason being, like I said, when I was a server paying for college, I would have people coming in and I was a great server, got great tips, but every once in a while there were certain groups, I'm not going to name them, but it had to do with Sunday, which cracks me up because it's like, but there was a certain group that would come in with 20 people after their service. And, and I'm a Christian. It's like, no, be generous. And they would run you to death and leave you $1 for the tip. And it's like, are you kidding me? But it's crazy, but it's like, what's the standard anymore? I mean, do I tip, the DoorDash person? I mean, they're already getting a tip for me going to get my food. Do I give them more money on top of that? It's confusing. And, like I said, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it's like causes total chaos in the tipping world.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Well, yeah. And like to take it to that kingdom perspective, right? Like we're called to be generous, not even in the church, we're called to be generous and give out of like cheerfully, not out of force or guilt or shame or whatever. And that tip culture, like you said, has gone from, I'm blessing you to it's an expectation. And it's destroying the whole tip culture. And like you said, I think it will backfire. I think it's going to get so out of control. People are just going to, no tip's going to be the standard, right? We're just going to start saying no tip because, actually 2 Corinthians 9:7 said, each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Right. And that's like what I'm trying to, in my own mind, get back to when that tip is shoved in, menu is shoved in front of my face. Like I need to give because out of a cheerful heart, not out of feeling forced or guilt-ridden. It's the same thing, which is subject for another day. But when the grocery store, right? Do you want to give to children with diabetes? And you're like, I'm just buying groceries. Like I haven't researched that organization. I don't know where my money's going, Yeah. And we feel guilty sometimes, or we're meant to feel guilty. I think that's their intention, is to pressure you to give. And that's not the way that we should be. That's not true stewardship, and that's not true generosity.
No, nor is it fair for the other person to expect it. And I'm going to be honest. I said something earlier, and I think that's where it's coming from, is every kid gets a trophy. So now everybody wants a tip. And no, you didn't deserve that tip, so you're not going to get one. And don't try to guilt me into it. And definitely don't get ticked off because you didn't get a tip. I mean, you're getting your income and stuff like that. Go get a different job or whatever the case may be. Now, again, I'm kind of excluding servers out there because and I don't know, there may be other, industries where they're not paid minimum wage or whatever, and that's kind of the thing. But anymore, when I see, fast food hiring at $15 an hour, I've got to assume that most people out there that's kind of their starting point. Maybe it's 12 in certain areas, maybe it's 20 in others. I don't know. But it's one of those things that the whole tip thing, don't assume it's going to happen. I mean, and I would challenge everybody to that, kind of your takeaway from that. As believers, like you said, we're called to be generous, but not guilt tripped. Okay. And that's where it's like, I stand my ground, and I challenge everybody out there to stay in their ground too. If you want to reward excellence, fantastic. Be generous. That's what we're called to do, but not out of guilt, right? Tip with intention. Don't fall into social pressure. Don't fall into fear. Set your own standards. For restaurants, tip, for counter service based on service and connection. If I sit down at a table and I've got a server checking on me and they're doing a good job, that's definitely worth a tip, right? If I'm ordering a book online and you want a tip through an auto funnel, what the hell are you thinking?
Change the price of your book.
I get it. It's like, hey, you never know until you ask, right? But don't get all butthurt and mean mug me because you didn't get the tip, right? And I guarantee they're not even looking at it. They're just looking at another revenue stream. But going back to your point, the barista at the drive-thru window at, your local coffee shop or whatever. No. Now, if extra change in a cup, boom, I got no problem doing that because I don't want to carry the change anyway. But that's not what it is anymore.
No.
Right. That's not what it is anymore. So, set your own standards, have some standards. I've got a couple things that I do. Goodwill, for example, going back, this is more of the donations than a tip. I love to thrift, and they always ask you, would you like to round up? Would you like to round up? And it goes for their social program. So what I did, my standard, if my bill is, ends in 50 cents or higher, I tip or, give the difference. If it's 50 cents or below, or I don't. Now, some of you are going, oh my gosh, John, you're this Christian, you're supposed to be doing it. Here's the deal. The CEO, last time I checked at Goodwill, makes over $600,000 a year. All of our donations, what they sell it for, just the CEO, not the rest of the executive team, is making over $600,000 a year. That's where your tips are going, right? That's where your extra money's going. So I'll support it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm assuming some of that's going through. And that goes back to what Wendy said earlier about researching these nonprofits and what like that. And again, that's not tipping. That's a little different story. Maybe we do an episode on that, but set your own standards, teach your kids the value of money and when to be generous. Right. And you should be generous, especially as a Christian listener here. You should be generous. But don't be guilted into donating, and make sure your generosity starts with God, right? Tithing, giving, and serving, not just tipping at Starbucks. Okay.
Yeah. So, and to that point, how many of us are tipping everywhere we go, but not giving anything to the church?
Ooh, look at you hitting the nail on the head, baby. That's awesome. That's awesome. And that's internal, guys. Reflect on that. If you're a Christian, you're going to church and you're not tithing and you're, oh, I'm so generous because of what I did at Starbucks. No. Let's keep it holistic and a big picture view of the world. But it's just crazy. I don't know. What do we want to wrap up with, Wendy? I mean, I feel like, again, this is more of a personal rant than an actual podcast video, but it's a valid thing, right?
I think that I would love to hear, because I think we could have some great conversations in the comments. I would love to hear from people, like, what your thoughts are. Are you like, give the dang tip, John and Wendy? Or are you like, I feel the same way? How many of you feel guilted into it versus like it almost takes the blessing away? Like, I don't get to bless people, because I would tip occasionally. Like, I know I went into a Dunkin' Donuts years ago, and there was somebody, when I went inside, and there was somebody that was in the best mood and making everybody like just in a good mood behind the counter, enjoying her job. And I tipped her, and she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Right.
Because she's going above and beyond. She's bringing her
she's going above and beyond. And I was able to recognize that, and she felt blessed.
Yeah.
It has become an entitlement that I honestly think it's a tactic of the enemy. I mean, if you really think about this, to just rob generosity, like something
deep,
something that used to be something that we could even be set apart, and now we can't. Now it's just forced. And so, so I think the takeaway is, don't give out of a cheerful heart, and don't give out of guilt and forcefulness.
Yeah, exactly.
Even though that's become the standard.
To echo what Wendy just said, we'd love to hear your input on it. Now, I will add a little caveat to that. If you are a server or a barista or something like that, don't come in with both guns blazing. It's one of those things that be realistic and challenge. I'm gonna post this out there. If you are in that situation, and you feel no, you should be mandatory tipping. I want to know what you're earning at that position. Don't have to tell me your whole thing, but I feel like you should share your, hey, I'm making $15 an hour, but I feel tips should be mandatory. Support it. Why? Why do you feel that way?
Tips? Yeah.
So and enlighten me. Maybe I'm wrong. That's something, but I don't think so. So that's the wrap on today's episode. But again, kind of hindsight now, I'm like, man, I feel like it was more of a vent session, but I'm tired of it, man. I'm tired of people guilting me and expecting a tip from me just because they looked my way and did their job. If you're, again, if you're doing above and beyond and stuff like that, and in those traditional roles like service or whatever, tip away. And if you feel generous, like Wendy did, tip, but don't fall or succumb to the guilt of tipping. Right.
Absolutely.
But anyway, do us a favor, leave a review, give us a subscribe, give us a like, show some love. It helps the things. And if you're ready to get your financial house in order and, start blessing yourselves and your family and those around you, we'd love to work with you and give you a free personal financial plan. All you got to do is go to safemoneyroadmap.com. We'll put the link in the descriptions and get your free personal financial review. I mean, there's no charge, no obligation, and no tip, right? So if you want that, just let us know. And in the comments, put that you heard about us through the podcast, and we'll make sure you get that free plan from one of our people. And again, remember, generosity is powerful, but wisdom is stewardship. Let's walk in both. And until next time, folks, stay healthy, stay wealthy, and stay biblically wise. And we will see you next week for another Prosper in the Kingdom. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Prosper in the Kingdom. If this episode added value to your day, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use the encouragement. For more resources, head to prosperinthekingdom.com. Let's continue building lives of purpose and abundance, one step at a time.